All right, and we are back. Another episode of Chasing 69, a New York Jets podcast. Teddy, episode 23, the Michael Jordan episode. That's just a
LeBron
dig
episode.
at you. I had to go MJ because I know you'd get defensive over LeBron. But this is Chasing 69, a New York Jets podcast alongside Teddy Pristash. I am Blake Pace. It is Wednesday, August 25th, and boy, oh boy, we are just about 2 weeks away from the NFL regular season kickoff. Bills at Rams. So excited. Today we're going to go into kind of just some news and notes from around Jets training camp. A couple of cuts made by now 2 days ago by the time this podcast is coming out, or maybe is today Wednesday? Yeah, that we're recording this. Yeah. So
Yep.
It's Thursday, August 25th. That's why I got thrown off a little bit. I screwed myself over there by the time this comes out, but going to get into preseason game 2, the Jets comeback victory over the Atlanta Falcons in riveting fashion. So we're going to get into all the news and notes from that game, from around the league, and kind of just prepare for the season. But before we get all to that, make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_chasing69, same as the YouTube page. Teddy is at Teddy Huncho. I am at Blake Andrew Pace. Make sure to follow all of my additional work over at Sports Illustrated as well for the Jets. Put out a 53-man roster projection with a couple weeks left to go. Got a rookie report coming out tomorrow, which is kind of going to coincide with some stuff we're going to talk about on the podcast tonight. And then Teddy, I'm looking at some college prospects for college football week 0 that we got to keep our eyes on for the Jets this upcoming year. So that's going to be a weekly thing I do through the college football season. So make sure to check all of that out at Jets Nation, the Sports Illustrated page for the New York Jets. Teddy, how you doing?
Doing well, man. I don't even know. I just am excited to talk football. Jets won again. We got a dynasty on our hands.
Yep.
Went to a wedding this last week. So I've been having a pretty good time.
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah. Robert Saleh, 4-0-1 as a.
I know we're the new Ravens.
I know that trend is starting, and we're just how many years away is that? If they're switched to 3 games now, they're in the 20s. So we're quite a ways away before Saleh can get to that. But he's still got that shot too. And we'll close it out, of course, with the Snoopy Bowl coming up at the end of this week as well too. But Teddy, before we get into the preseason game against the Atlanta Falcons, just a couple of notes from around practice. Of course, the Jets made 5 more roster cuts on Tuesday. The most notable being Eddie Pinheiro, kicker, has been released from the team, which essentially means Greg Zuerlein has won the starting kicker job. Nothing too surprising, I would say. Through camp and through preseason games, not only does Zuerlein have, I guess, more of an established presence among the league, but was more accurate, was kicking from a longer distance more consistently. Anything kind of stand out to you about that, or is it just, hey, the Jets have a kicker?
No, I guess it's the Jets have a kicker. I like Zuerlein definitely. Greg the Leg, I do think Pinheiro was pretty good last year. I think he missed 1 extra point and no field goals, or maybe the other way around. So whatever. I'm cool with it. It's good that we have kickers who aren't just like random no names anymore. So I'm in.
I did see it 6 straight seasons. What?
No, I was just go ahead and say it. I was just looking at this on the doc here.
Yeah, as you say, 6 different kickers in 6 straight years for the New York Jets, which that I feel like kickers have become that position where there's a lot of teams that are like that. Zuerlein, an established name and probably someone that could be a multi-year starter for the Jets.
Yeah, and I'm fine with like approaching kickers like that. But they really are so important when you're in these like 1 possession games, late games, or even just, throughout the game, you miss 2 couple field goals and then you're down more points than you should be. So it's like one of those things that like I don't care about, but then when it matters, I'm going to care about it. So
yep,
I'm glad that we got a kind of a veteran guy we know is going to be able to keep his head out there.
Just let it be known as well, too, Teddy is very anti-kicker, as he got rid of them in our dynasty football league. So he abolished
Who wants kickers in fantasy football leagues?
No one. I've tried convincing all my other leagues to get rid of them ever since you did it. So I appreciate that. Speaking of another Jet, just to correlate with fantasy, I texted this to you the other night. I was in the draft, and we're about to talk about Garrett Wilson a little bit. I got him at the beginning of the 2nd round. And to me, in a 12-person league, that is just ridiculous. So just throwing that out there. That's not what we're here to talk about with Garrett Wilson. Just wanted to bring up, because we're going to touch on him a little bit as we get into the preseason game against the Falcons. I just hit my mic, so I apologize if that sounded a little funky there. But Garrett Wilson, kind of been noted a few times earlier through training camp and then was picked up again on Wednesday, the 24th. A little bit of drops here and there, a little bit of mental breaks. The drop today was on an easy screen pass from, I believe it was Flacco or Mike White, but either way, a little bit of the yips. This is something that you'll see with receivers all over all the time. And it's one of those storylines that shouldn't be a storyline. It ends up being one. Last year, if you think about the most notable name, Jamar Chase, he just couldn't catch a football all preseason. Then by the end of the year, people were saying, nope, he's already the best receiver in football. So it's one of those stories that you have to wait until we get into the games, and we'll talk about how he looked in these games so far. And I like what we've seen from Garrett Wilson, but it is something to, I guess, at least just put a pin in, keep an eye on as we approach the regular season, because obviously we want the Jets' 10th overall pick to severely contribute to this offense. And so I kind of put that on there. You hadn't really seen much about it after taking a look. Where do you stand on a receiver with a little bit of the yips?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really care. You look at what happened with Chase last year. I feel like we're in that time of preseason where it's like we're looking for anything we can gather, any information, but a lot of that just turns into kind of overreacting to little nuggets like this. But I am happy that we're bringing it up because it's just kind of like a, hey, don't freak out if you were, because it really is like a non-story. And sure, maybe you can say he's had a few drops, but you also know he's been making plays consistently throughout camp, been showing up in the games, even if it's not with these like breakout plays, but just doing the right thing. We'll get into the Eagles game a little bit more specifically, but I actually have been rising on my confidence for Garrett Wilson and what I think he's going to be able to do in year one. So I think this is good to bring up just to show that I don't really think it matters and I disagree with it. Or like I take the opposite projection, I guess. And I think I'm rising on him. So maybe this will have some other people fall.
I don't mean to put you on the spot. Is there a name of a Jets wide receiver over the years that was just terrible with when it came to drops and it translated into a regular season? Has there ever been a guy that you're just like, this motherfucker cannot keep his hands on the ball, at least in recent memory?
I'm sure there are some that a lot of other Jets fans like are screaming now, but yeah, they're probably pissed. No, I can't think of any off the top of my head though. Maybe if I sat down and thought about it a little more. Yeah, I don't know. I know Braylon Edwards had a lot of problems with drops, but not really with the Jets. Gotcha. So I always kind of hated people would bring up stone hands and I'd be like, all right, but he's been sick with us. So
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I'd have to think about that a little. Probably somewhere in those dead years of like, I don't know,
where
2013 to now.
Those dead years that were a decade.
Yeah, 2012 to now. Yeah, that is a decade. Look at us.
A decade of misery. Okay. Well, and like you said, it is that point of the preseason where if there's no news, it's great because that means nobody is hurt. Nothing has gone terribly wrong, but also you're going to nitpick just about everything that you can get out of a training camp practice because people have jobs to do. They have stories they need to write, deadlines to meet. And so if a guy drops a screen pass and it's the third week in a row, he's dropped a pretty easy grab, then you're going to write a story about it. So obviously when he gets on the field, as we'll talk about in a little bit, he's looked pretty impressive. So just something to keep an eye on. And like you said, it's the slow part of the season in terms of team notes. This is really what we got. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this to you, Teddy, before we move into the preseason game. And this is only for the creeps that are watching and not listening. Can you see when you drink out of your cup of water that it changes to the backdrop that you've got? Like it looks like you're drinking an invisible glass.
That's pretty funny.
You're miming.
I did not know that, but
it looks cool.
Let's keep doing it.
Yeah,
I get thirsty. Sorry, gang.
Yeah, me too. It's okay. All right, Teddy. Well, let's move into the preseason game then. There wasn't really anything else of note that I thought from training camp. The only thing that we talked about a little bit before the show was there was a report that right now Michael Carter still has the RB1 job over Bryce Hall. And I think kind of like with the Sauce versus Bryce Hall battle, it was kind of one of those where you assume, okay, by the time the regular season rolls around, the rookie that they've drafted and said they're going to kind of run this running game through will be the starter. And we're about a week or so away from things really being finalized on this depth chart. But I didn't put that on there. Is there anything that you care to mention with that, or your thoughts on the run game? Is it in your eyes, is it more so an applause for Michael Carter rather than a diss on Bryce Hall?
Yeah, I don't think
That's what I
it's
would take it as.
necessarily negative for Bryce Hall. I do think it's interesting because I think when Bryce Hall got drafted, we all kind of were like, okay, well, they want a kind of a stronger guy. Michael Carter's going to be that kind of Robin to Bryce Hall's Batman, which I guess is still probably what is going to end up happening. But Michael Carter, I mean, he showed us last year he's dynamic. I mean, he basically started all last year after the first bit. Excuse me. And he's better. He's better. Like, he plays bigger than he is. You think of him as just this like
He's a
small
bowling
guy,
ball.
but he can handle running in the like running between the tackles. He can make people miss. He has a lot of the same skill set that Bryce Hall has. So I do think it's interesting. I think especially early, we're going to see Michael Carter probably a bit more than maybe we were originally expecting. But I also think it's going to be one of those things where you hope it's going to be hard to like keep Bryce off the field. You know, if he is as dynamic and as great as, the number one running back in his class, I think he's definitely going to earn his time and earn his touches. But by no means do I think Michael Carter is going to be an afterthought.
He was one of the more elusive, efficient running backs with the target share that he got last year amongst the league. I think it was eighth most efficient running back in football last year on his touches. And of course, we know he can do stuff in the pass game as well too.
I
He
believe
really
he was
is a
up there in
bowling
broken
ball.
tackles as well.
Yeah. He's a bowling ball. He just bounces off of guys. It's not like strength where he's running him over Derrick Henry style, but he bounces off of him and he keeps his feet moving. So, last year he was looked at, in my eyes as the fourth best running back in that class behind Najee, Etienne, and then Javonte Williams. So it's no surprise that, he's still being looked at to have a good role here. It'll be interesting to see what the balance is, because this is an offense that will either ride the hot hand or keep shuffling in guys that are both the hot hand. So we know this team wants to run the football. Just thought it was something interesting, kind of to keep a note on as we get closer to the season. But Teddy, let's pivot on to the preseason win over the Atlanta Falcons, 24-16, overcoming that 16-3 halftime deficit. Just a few things that we want to touch on. I think one of the first things being, shout out to Robert Saleh. He was torn about it over the weekend, but then as he rolled into Monday, he made the decision. We are going to rest all of our non-rookie starters. That was something that I would have probably said to go and do for in preseason game one. I wrote before the game that I would do that, and I'd kind of ease them into game two and then play them probably a little bit more in game three. But I understand the importance of getting a young team out there. I think after the scare that they had injury wise with Wilson in game one, that probably made it a little bit easier for Saleh to decide on. But what did you think about not really putting anybody of note out there for the game outside of these rookies?
Yeah, definitely the right call. I think it was like 17 out of 22 starters that all sat, probably barring just the rookies, essentially. I definitely think it's the right thing. It is, you sit down and you're excited to watch the game, and it's not the starters that you were hoping to see, but these are the guys battling for spots, so it's still entertaining, still fun. Yeah, definitely think that was the right call. I do think it was funny that the Falcons did not rest their starters, like they were playing their starters. And I mean, you could, whether it's just that the Jets are not very good or that their backups are not very good compared to the Falcon starters, the beginning of the game, it looked like the same kind of Jets games that we've been used to watching over the past 4 or 5 years, where the offense is just punt, 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 punt. Biggest plays are all on third and longs, where they don't get the first down and still end up punting. And then the defense was just letting up big play after big play after big play. So then once we got into the second half, when Falcons backups came in, our kind of third and fourth string came in, we turned it on, showed Robert Saleh that these backups are looking for a place on the roster. but it was just funny watching, being like, wow, this is familiar. This is like watching a regular season Jets game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, to me, that's what the preseason is really about. And I understand for certain teams with a lot of new pieces, you do want to get everybody integrated. But these are the opportunities for those guys at the back end to really earn their spot on the roster. So it gave more opportunity to do so. It prevents the injuries from the guys that are important to this team. And the only thing that I would say I don't love is that you're not getting a lot of great game reps for Flacco in the starting offense. Now, of course, they're getting all of those reps in practice against their own defense. And you know, he's come out and said, Salah's come out and said that in preseason game 3, that he's assuming most of his starters are going to play almost the entirety of the first half. So, you know, that'll be a good opportunity against a different NFL defense for Flacco to get accustomed to having Dwayne Brown at left tackle and his right tackle situation with Fant, and then his receivers out there. Like, that'll be a good half to get things going. But, you know, look, man, I say it every week. The start of that schedule is brutal. That would be my one concern, is that we didn't see Flacco in week 1 at all. We didn't see him in the second preseason week. I would just, as long as he plays a half, you know, it does help that he's been around the league for so long and he's played on a lot of different, you know, offenses, and he's had success in this league, but it's so many new moving parts now, given the Wilson injury, given the Becton injury, where you're stuck in this situation where you want to keep everybody healthy. And that's the side I will always stay on. Preseason, to me, I don't give a fuck about, but this is a situation now where you're like, we really are trying to piece everything together at once, just in time for the start of the season.
Yeah, it's a valid point. I would kind of push back, just because I don't think Flacco needs the preseason reps. I think he's going to go out there and know what he's doing.
Yeah.
But in that same token, I think that kind of what you're saying, the young guys around him are going to all benefit from getting in those reps with Flacco, regardless, you know, if Flacco needs him or not. So do I think it's the biggest deal? No, but definitely, I honestly hadn't seen yet that Salah said he was going to play the starters the whole first half. So that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, hopefully Joe stays healthy out there.
Yep. Yeah. They said they're gonna get Brown out there at left tackle to try the fan out. So you get the entire starting offensive line, Flacco. And then he said just about everybody on defense as well, too. Now, of course, if people are walking in a little bit hobbled, maybe not. But as of right now, I think his plan is for the entire first half. Teddy, to kind of pivot into our next talking point from this preseason game, talking about Joe Flacco and the quarterback situation, quite a tale of two halves at quarterback. And, you know, if you just take a look at even the numbers by themselves, in the first half, Mike White, 12 of 17. Hey, good completion percentage, 90 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But then Streveler comes in the second half, and it's 8 for 11, 119, 1 touchdown and a pick. What to me stands out is just the yards per attempt, moving the football down the field. Like we were saying, you know, 12 completions for 90 yards. That's 5.3 yards per attempt by Mike White in that first half. They scored 3 points in that first half. And then Streveler comes in 10.8 yards per attempt. Also took the ball 6 times with his legs for 33 yards. Really, just watching the game, I mean, the offense actually sparked with him in at quarterback. And you're like, okay, well, this is a competition for QB3, but also at the same time, in this first week or two, I'm in the mindset that maybe Zach Wilson could be sat until week 3 to be 100% at the absolute latest to me. But you're also talking about now your backup quarterback. And so take me through your thoughts, because I know you spoke about the tale of two halves earlier, but just when you saw what you saw from Mike White, what you saw from Streveler, and where you stand on with this QB3 battle. Because Mike White, we talked about it last week. It's like, hey, it's a tough time for that crowd.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison, because Mike White obviously gets the benefit of the doubt because of his like, you know, last year
game.
having that one good game. But we've kind of agreed that Mike White's kind of not who, in my opinion, I wouldn't be confident with him as my QB2. In terms of Streveler, I mean, the kid's running around out there. He's making plays. He's throwing the ball downfield. He plays with a lot of urgency. So I kind of am in, like, I don't want to just say I like him better than Mike White, just for the fact that, to me, Streveler plays like you know, like a guy who is trying to make a football team, and do everything he can with every second he's out there on the field, and he's running around, and he plays very, very fast. I think I mentioned it last week,
Yeah.
but he literally plays like his pants are on fire. But at that same time, he kind of does offer that like more explosiveness, kind of more similar to Zach Wilson running around out there. I think that's been the big like argument for Streveler all year. So I wouldn't at all hate if he kind of overpassed Mike White for the QB3 job, but am I really projecting that? I don't know if I'm ready to do that. Obviously we're talking about the QB3 here, but I mean,
Right.
like you said, it does matter while Zach Wilson's not healthy. Man, I don't know. I'm fine either way they go here. It would be fun to kind of see Streveler, but I'm also not ready to just say I think this guy's better than Mike White after a couple games.
The thing with Mike White is that he at least has the well, it's not much of a longer tenure with the team, but he has been around for last season. He has spent all that time with the offense. Like
1
that's
year
earned
is worth
him
millions.
Exactly. And Streveler, the offense hums. Streveler, when you're that dual threat kind of quarterback and you're just frantic all over the place, that's tough for a defense to keep up with,
especially third and fourth stringers,
Right. So, you have to understand that he is getting those reps in against the backups of the backups. Whereas Mike White is, for a little bit was getting that first team defense with the Falcons. Not that it's a good defense. I'd assume they've got probably one of the worst ones in football, but I
tell
just
the defensive coordinator that.
Yeah, sorry. I don't think that right now it matters, but it doesn't. That's the thing, is like we just need Flacco to get through these first 2 weeks, and then this is not important at all. Yep. Because once you get Wilson back, then Flacco's there, and Mike White and Streveler are both on the practice squad, or at least one of them is. But just for the sake of this guy is going to be the QB2 heading into the season, is it better to have the guy that defenses don't know how to game plan for, or the guy that you probably trust a little bit, that spent a little bit more time around the team and has actually seen, live action against, NFL starters?
Yeah. And I kind of wavered a little bit when I was speaking to it, but thinking about it now, if Joe Flacco goes down and you ask me, who do you want to come in and start? I mean, I'm picking Mike White. I really am. I don't think he's that good, but I think he at least has shown he knows what to do in the offense. He knows how to make the correct decision. I mean, that's why he had such a great Bengals game, because he knew, hey, throw it to these flat routes out to the receivers and the tight ends, and they'll get 5, 7, 10 yards, and it worked. So yeah, I guess I'm still definitely on side Mike White if you think about it that way. Yeah,
I probably would be too. And who knows, we'll probably get to see a little bit of both of them in the second half of this upcoming game against the Giants. But it is 2 games in a row now where Streveler has outperformed White. You just take a look at the numbers. This preseason, White completing 59.5% of passes for 188 yards. That's just 5.1 yards per attempt, 0 touchdowns, 0 drives, 13 points in 12 drives, just scoring over 1 point a drive. Streveler, like we said, going against less competition, 70% of passes, 181 yards, so 9.1 yards per attempt there, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, 8 carries for 64 yards. The offense scores 28 points in 7 drives, so 3 points more a drive than with Mike White. So got to take into consideration you're getting that exposure against worse defensive players for both teams in the Eagles and the Falcons. But I mean, those are pretty strong numbers. I wouldn't say that it's all over for Mike White, but it is a position battle that could creep itself into, these final weeks of the season if again Streveler outperforms White against the Giants.
Definitely.
So kind of switching over to 2 more things. Defensively, as a whole, not pretty. And not pretty a couple weeks in a row now, and a continuation from a season last year where the Jets really stunk it up defensively. And I don't know if I'm assuming you probably haven't seen this, because I just listened to it just a couple hours before we taped. Joe Caparoso was talking on Badlands, and he was saying like, hey, if this season starts off rough defensively for the Jets, watch out for Ulbrich on the hot seat. And so as a name to go, because I don't think they're going to panic mid-season and get rid of Saleh, and Mike LaFleur is Matt. Which
Mike.
one is it again? Mike. It's
Mike.
Mike LaFleur. Why do I, it's tough. The Matt and Mike thing has always been
we have
a
twin friends who are named Matt and Mike. So those names are always interchangeable for Blake and I.
It gets confusing. And Teddy, I know that we're going to talk about individuals specifically on this defense, but when you hear that and kind of people hinting at like, hey, Ulbrich might be on the hot seat here, what do you think about that?
It's funny that I haven't listened to Badlands this week, but I was actually just thinking in my head, I was like, these type of starts, and again, it was our backups against their starters. So take that for what you want, but it's 2 weeks in a row now where the starting defense has just done absolutely nothing. The opposing team has had explosive plays. They've marched down the field. Really nothing holding them back. And what I was going to say before you mentioned that, I was like, I don't want to overreact, but it makes me worry for Jeff Ulbrich because
that's funny.
It does speak somewhat to, the system and the plays that they're calling and, why aren't guys understanding their assignments and why aren't they in the right spot, and maybe if you put the starters out, I do think that excuse, I guess, to some extent is last year we had such a terrible defense and it was basically like these guys, who are out there on the field. We have all new starters on the secondary now. But I don't know. It makes me at least a little bit worried. It's not panic mode, obviously, but it's definitely keeping this on the radar. How is this Jets defense actually going to look? And I totally agree, especially if first 3-4 weeks, we're giving up 30 plus points a game. It's not going to be looking good for Jeff Ulbrich. And we've talked about it in the offseason. He is the dispensable piece here. If things go poorly for the Jets, I personally don't see them making a change at GM. I don't see them making a change at head coach unless it's an extreme failure of a year. And I think that, as NFL fans, people demand change when things aren't going well. And I think Ulbrich is that guy on the chopping block. So am I panicked? No. Is my finger on the panic button? Am I looking over at it? Maybe because this defense was historically bad last year. It was, and they've improved it a lot, but it has to be better.
Here's where I'll say we can really put our finger on the panic button is if we roll into this weekend and the Giants are out there playing their starters and it's not a good offense. It's a really bad offensive line. It is one of the worst starting quarterbacks in football, a depleted receiving core. The New York Giants offense is torching the Jets starters in that first half and there's communication issues. There are missed tackles. That is when I would say, okay, maybe I'm not looking forward to week 1 against the Baltimore Ravens.
Definitely.
And we've talked about facing the AFC North to start off the season, how difficult that first half of the schedule is. Cleveland, I wouldn't be so worried about. There's reports now that maybe Josh Rosen is getting some look at as QB1 in the way of
I'm in
Deshaun Watson's absence. Hey, I'll take it.
I'll take it.
But then you've got the Steelers who are always going to be physical and good on offense. So they got an upgraded quarterback this year either way, and then Cincinnati. So yeah, if Saturday first half looks a little ugly, now it is the first action. That's the thing. It's the preseason. You have to take it with a grain of salt. The 4-0 Detroit Lions in the preseason went 0-16 in the regular season. Like none of it means anything except when, from year to year, you're seeing the same problems once it leaks into the regular season. I don't know how long you would go and let things go poorly defensively before you make a switch, but I can't imagine that if this weekend doesn't look great against the Giants and then, you get to week 3 or 4 and there's still miscommunication issues and there are missed tackles and people just not understanding their assignments defensively, I don't think they're going to wait terribly long at all to make a change.
Yeah. And we'll hope that again, once we have the actual players out there, CJ Mosley leading and telling people what to do. That's kind of one of his main strengths at this point, but we'll see what happens. But I do want to spend a little bit more time talking specifically about this secondary.
Yeah.
Because there was one man that did not make a good case for himself. And that
No.
man was Bryce Hall, currently battling to be the cornerback number 2 on the depth chart against Sauce Gardner. Didn't look good, Blake. Did not look
The
good.
battle's got to be over. I think that's just like and Saleh came out and he was like, yeah, we're probably pretty close to being ready to make our decision. It was some form of that, so don't quote me on exactly what he was saying, but yeah, he's like, we're going to make our decision this week on starting cornerback. And it's like, well, we just had one cornerback do extremely poorly. The other one we'll get into a little bit didn't get targeted once. So I think he's doing a pretty good job. So that being said, yeah, in just a couple of drives, Hall was flagged for a penalty. He missed a tackle, beaten multiple times in pass coverage. And look, we knew when they drafted Sauce Gardner at 4, he was going to be a starting cornerback on this team. It was one of the worst defenses historically last year, terrible on the back end. You don't draft a guy at number 4 and then just have him come off the bench in his first season unless he's a massive disappointment. But he kept saying it's a battle. And Hall had been in there. He had been working his ass off. We were giving him praise a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But up to this point, I don't know how you can watch both of them on the field and say that it is a competition. To me, this thing it should have been done. I understand you want to make the rookie earn his spot, but it's done. Cut it.
Yeah. And Saleh came out today. They're asking him about it in press conferences, and he's saying, hey, they're still going to like split reps with the ones. I don't want to make my decision yet. But I mean, I think he even said, he's like, Bryce Hall is better than just what that one game shows, which he is.
Yeah,
I mean, we know
definitely.
he is, but
yeah.
It's just like, it's time to, like what you said, it's time to make the decision, give Sauce that confidence. I mean, he's definitely earned it already. You can't say he hasn't. And the thing with Bryce Hall is when we talk about Bryce Hall and what he was good at and what he was bad at last year, what he was good at was having good technique and staying in coverage and being in the right spot when it mattered. And what he didn't really do great at was, the ball skills and jumping up and deflecting a ball, where these plays where he was getting burnt on weren't that problem. It was just, poor technique, poor eyes, not being in phase with your receiver, and the touchdown he let up, he was like a step behind. I'm not going to kill him for that. Like, he got toasted a little, but it wasn't like he was completely toast. But it's just, you don't like to see like the technical mistakes and the assignment mistakes when you're already worried about the kind of ball seeking ability, and finding that ball. So I definitely think it wasn't a great game for him, just because he is, in his mind, he's still battling for that starting spot. But at the end of the day, I think Sauce has this locked up, which we'll talk about when we get into these other rookies.
Yeah, of course. Anybody else in the secondary that you kind of want to talk about a little bit before we go to rookies?
I do, actually. Thank you for asking. I want to talk about Will Parks, who has been starting at free safety while Joyner's been injured or not playing.
Sick.
Yeah, whatever's going on there. He's impressed me, and I mean, he's not the greatest. He's not like a Pro Bowl safety by any means, but he's impressed me. He's had a couple big hits. He's out there making plays, I mean, his coverage ability, kind of hard to tell from what we can see of the preseason games, but I just think he was kind of our name to watch as where is he going to fit in on this roster? Is he going to maybe make a play at that starting role? I do think it's definitely a possibility he's out there week 1 starting over Joyner, especially just because Joyner hasn't been on the field, hasn't been playing. So just something to watch. I think he's been doing well. I want to give him his flowers.
And correct me if I'm wrong, he was the big story about closing out the season, right? Like, he came over, had previously been playing cornerback. They moved him to safety, and PFF graded him out. Maybe it was the Buccaneers game or one of the closing games of the season was the highest graded safety out in football in the league that week. So there was a lot of buzz heading into like, hey, we might have found something here. The position change, kind of getting him comfortable there. Look, I wrote about it in position groups to watch for this preseason game on Monday. The safety position is not the most important in the world, and it's strong with Jordan Whitehead, but LaMarcus Joyner is a question mark with age, with injury history, and the depth behind him. We were like, who is going to be that guy that steps up? It's nice to see Parks, who kind of ascended toward the end of last season, kind of take over that role. And, he split his snaps in preseason game 1. He was more of a box safety, whereas Whitehead was playing a little bit further back in terms of snaps when they were both on the field together. I didn't see the snap count for him in terms of where he was this past game, but the fact is they're trying to put him out there and give him that opportunity. And if he's the guy that Saleh is going to while Joyner is out, I think that's a kind of a thing to keep an eye on, because it's not going to take much to push Joyner out of that starting role if he is shaky to start the season, just given the fact that he really hasn't, it was unfortunate how quickly his season ended last year, but he's up there in age. If he looks a little slow, maybe this guy is the move. I mean, he's not young by any means. He's 27. He's been around the league since 2016, but a lot of that time was spent as a cornerback. Then he comes over from Miami at the end of the season and came out strong. So no, you're right. We do need to give him a little bit of credit there, because that's one of those names that you said, it was like, keep an eye on. And
Yeah.
he has gotten his opportunity.
And if he doesn't become the starter, it at least gives me a little bit more confidence in, okay, what happens if one of these safeties goes down? Whereas before it was like, I don't even know what to expect from any of these guys. Probably not much. Now, I'm feeling all right about it.
Good. Perfect. Well, Teddy, it's time to move into the rookies then. And I kind of want to just do this by going just basically in the order in which they were picked in by the Jets, and just go Sauce, Wilson, Johnson, Brees, and then into the later
This
guys.
is the rookies are what I mean, where I think that's the most fun thing about preseason, because they're getting more reps than normal starters. They're out there. They're the guys we've never seen in Jets uniforms before. So yeah, definitely.
So like we were saying, there was a lot of chatter about the Halls, Bryce Hall. And one of the things that I've always,
Brees.
One of the things that I always hear about cornerbacks and cornerback play is, if we're hearing a lot about you, it's not necessarily a good thing. And if we hear nothing about you, it's a pretty damn good thing. Who was the cornerback last year, Cincinnati? Eli Apple. He was the most talked about cornerback in all of football, and it was always because he was getting torched. We heard nothing about Sauce Gardner in his preseason game against Atlanta, and that was because he was just a blanket. Like, he targeted 0 times for the second game in a row now. It was only 8 coverage snaps, and I believe the week before it was 11. So it's 19 coverage snaps, 0 targets. But what that tells you is offenses aren't even giving their receivers a chance throwing over his way. What are your kind of just takeaways from Sauce so far?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I mean, 19 coverage snaps, sure, it's not a ton, but that's a solid amount of plays that you're out there covering someone and that they're not throwing your way. So yeah, I love to see that. That's exactly what you said. That's the number one thing I'm looking for from Sauce, is just, not being targeted ever.
Yeah.
I saw, I believe him and Garrett Wilson, who we'll talk about in a second, they're 2 of the top 5 rookies in PFF grade over the preseason, or maybe I think it was over both preseason games. And I saw some Jets Twitter account commented and was like, I think it was NYJ Matt or NYJ Mike, one of the two. And they were like, how do you lose 30 PFF points when you haven't even been targeted?
Yeah.
And obviously there's more nuance to it than that, but
Right.
it's a pretty good point. I mean, this guy's been playing great, and again, it's preseason. He's not out there a ton, but Sauce Gardner has shown everything you've wanted him to show so far. And the fact that they're not even throwing his way is a great, great sign, because unlike some other aspects of football, like in the preseason and whatever, when you're just locking up, when you're playing one-on-one on a wide receiver, that's just skill versus skill. There's really not much else to it. So yeah, I'm Sauce is like, I'm so
What
excited. You know, I have
what they
a soft
drafted him to
spot for
do.
defensive backs, so
Yeah, that's
I'm
what they
I'm
drafted him
amped
to do.
about
I mean, that
Sauce.
was his big thing in college. I mean, he barely got targeted. It was tough
Yeah,
to see him, you're trying to evaluate cornerbacks and you're like, I'd love to see him kind of challenge the ball, but the quarterbacks just aren't thrown his way because he's that much of a lockdown corner. So,
and I
um,
believe I believe on the play that Bryce Hall let up the touchdown, you can just look on the other side and you just see Sauce locking his
yep,
guy up. And
yep,
it's
exactly.
yeah,
A tale of two corners. And obviously they're
definitely.
both out there because we're sitting DJ Reed and you want to kind of see that battle go. So, we've talked about it already before when we talked about Bryce, but it's just like the starters are DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner, and
Yeah,
that's the end of the story.
what we've been
So,
expecting.
kind of likewise, as we move over to the other side of the football, not a ton of snaps. Garrett Wilson was only out there for 10 offensive snaps. He caught all three of his targets, however, for 15 yards. Nothing tremendous numbers wise, especially when you consider how little he was out there for, but the natural catchability is just something that really excites you with a wide receiver. And we talked about going into the draft that when we talked about, I think it was our top 5 wide receivers, is like the big comp was always CeeDee Lamb, just because of how natural he was moving his body in these off target throws and being able to haul them in. You tweeted out from the Chasing 69 account this picture of Garrett Wilson with just these oven mitts on. You got to be excited to see that out of your rookie wide receiver.
Definitely. And I mean, exactly kind of how you said it. Sure, it's not big plays, three catches for 15 yards, but the abilities that you've just been able to see just in these preseason games alone, and the ability to kind of adjust his body in the air, and he really goes up and grabs the ball. That's why, I tweeted that out. He's got those big hands, and I think it's just going to be so helpful for him. It's funny that there's all these drop kind of reports coming out, because I think that what he's going to be able to be so good at is just like snagging the ball, and that's kind of been one of his strengths. All throughout another player comparison, you said CeeDee Lamb. I'll throw in Jalen Waddle, just like that, like spectacular catchability of just like jumping up and getting it somehow, and
attacking the ball.
It seems like they, don't have any chance to get it, and then somehow they come down with it. So yeah, I'm excited. I think he has just skyrocketed for me, and what I think his ceiling is with this team this year, because I really do just think there's a chance he goes out there and just starts demanding targets with the way he plays.
I don't know if it was the third down play, third and short, where he gets the outside move, but then the ball is a little bit toward the inside and he just shoves his hand right through the defensive back and just hauls it out. And it was one of the 2 spectacular plays, but you're just like, the way that because his stature wise, he's not physically overpowered. He's not like a DK Metcalf type build, but he's so strong in the way that he attacks the football. And even in those ways where he's, extending his body and still being able to be aggressive, it really does. It's very reminiscent of those 2 guys that we've mentioned. So definitely exciting.
I want to see some goal line fades thrown his way.
Oh yeah,
see if he
definitely
can just go up and grab those.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so exciting for the top 2 guys. Switching over to, I don't know, it's preseason, so I don't want to say that stuff is like bad or not great, but
just quieter, we'll say.
Exactly. Well, yeah, Jermaine Johnson
spark plays.
Honestly, the next 3 guys I think that we are going to talk about, we can even loop them all in together. Jermaine Johnson, Bryce Hall, and Jeremy Ruckert, all just pretty quiet days considering. And we can take them one by one. Jermaine was out there a decent amount. I think the snap count ended up being, it was 19 defensive snaps. He played 5 on special teams as well too. 1 tackle, 1 QB pressure. It's what we are seeing, what we knew we were going to see out of Jermaine Johnson in his development from college edge rusher into the NFL. Whereas in college, when you're just this physical freak, you can kind of work your way around college tackles. But when you come to the pros and every tackle is one of the best tackles on this planet, you need strong hands. You need refined pass rush moves. And he's just not there yet. He's a very raw prospect. And because of that, the Falcons, who don't have a good offensive line by any means, will probably have one of the worst ones in football this year. they did a pretty good job holding him up. So your thoughts on what we saw from the Jets' third first-round pick in preseason game 2?
Like you said, kind of hard to get a real read. I mean, he had one pressure and
Yeah.
however many snaps he played, but that play specifically, I really liked the way how he went at the quarterback kind of in the pocket and then readjusted as the quarterback started to get outside of the pocket, maintained the edge, kind of kept the quarterback inside. He ended up, I think, gaining like a yard or running out of bounds or something like that. But that has been something that the Jets have just been so bad at, is just like having an edge that can actually maintain the edge of your defense and the edge of that pocket. So that was definitely good to see. Overall, otherwise, nothing really spectacular. I agree with the things you say about just needing to improve his technical skills, his hand skills. But he's a rookie, that'll come.
Exactly. Bryce Hall, 1 yard on 4 carries.
Not much to say. You can blame the backup offensive line. That's probably what I'll do. Didn't look great, but I mean, he didn't. To me, he didn't look like he couldn't run or that he wasn't explosive. It was just not great plays. Only 4 carries.
Yep. And then Rucker, some good, some bad plays in run blocking. Caught his only target for 4 yards. Small sample size.
Yeah. I do. The only thing really to say, I mean, there's not much you can take away from this, but I have been hearing, I think Nick Bawden, with the way the Jets want to run their offense, very run heavy, 12 personnel, a lot of big bodied guys out there. I do think probably he'll end up making the team and holding down that fullback role. And then, Rucker, as well as the other tight ends, will work in as well. But that would obviously kind of pull back any real chance Rucker has of being a impact player this year.
Yeah. Honestly, my 53-man prediction for the roster, this was before this most recent game. I did have Bawden as a cut because I was like, I liked what we saw to Rucker. But I agree. I think they're more going to be on that. We want to have a structured, somewhat experienced fullback in there, and Rucker will have his time to get onto the field, but you're probably right. It's not going to be a ton this season. 2 final guys to talk about, one bad and one good. Max Mitchell, pretty rough game at tackle there against, primarily backups for Atlanta as well too. Just did not look too great. I'll pull up the snap counts in the numbers that we've got here. It was 25 offensive snaps. Pro Football Focus gave him a 49.9 grade in that game. But yeah, he struggled against the run and the pass. Just not a good showing from Max, but he's a depth tackle. He was a project, what we said from the start. So it's like, what more do you want from him?
Yeah. Again, not a ton of analysis. I think that, I, at least, as well as I'm sure other Jets fans, when Mekhi Becton went down, was hopeful that he could kind of step up. Maybe he doesn't need that developmental year that kind of we all are assuming this year is going to be. But, it does seem like that's going to be the case. He definitely just needs to get stronger, to be able to handle these defensive linemen. But yeah, he's going to be a guy that I'm going to keep my eye on all year. So,
yeah. And then the last one to finish off with, and he's a scary motherfucker.
Here we go.
Michael Clemens. I'll just tee it up. I'll tee it up to here because I feel like for the most of the rookies, they either didn't get a ton of snaps, or just didn't really do much to show you anything to really get super excited about. Clemens out there, 34 defensive snaps. He tore apart Philly. He played really well here too. Take it away. What are your thoughts here on Clemens?
Yeah, I mean, he's just been good out there. Like he's just been doing what you want to see from someone playing edge. And I think that my favorite thing that I've seen is just his ability to kind of while defending the run, he maintains the edge and really I don't know how to describe it textually without showing you, but he basically kind of rides the heels of the offensive line to maintain, okay, if he cuts back, I'm going to tackle this guy. If he keeps going this way, I'm flowing with the play. Which again is just one of these things that has plagued the Jets for years, like this lack of an edge presence that's able to, number one, get to the quarterback, and then number two, maintain the edge on run plays, not allow cutbacks, not allow guys to get outside, things like that. Especially with kind of our worry about how well are these guys on our D line at run defending. I think just being able to have Clemens, who seems to clearly be earning a spot in the rotation, I just think it's going to be a big help. I think he's doing something that he's showing a skill set that not a lot of our other guys on the D line specialize in. So I think that makes him kind of irreplaceable, at least, in terms of this roster. And he's just been doing great. And that's what you want to see. He's a big man. He plays with a lot of freaking fire. Yeah, I'm all in on him. I think he's been doing great.
To me, it's just like, man, I love the depth of the defensive line. Like I loved it after the draft and free agency, but then seeing Clemens kind of step up where he is going to have a role in there, especially when you know how Saleh wants to go 8 to 10 deep on this defensive line. It's like they're going to be able to throw so many guys at you, and there are some guys that I'm super excited about, and then you've got these high upside guys where it's like Clemens and Jermaine. It's like the potential for both of them. I obviously think Jermaine's is a lot higher than Clemens, but could be two really strong hits where it's like, we've got enough depth up here now where we don't need them to be stars, but just give them their opportunities, put them out there at what they do best, and sky could be the limit for this defensive line. So I think it's easily one of the strongest position groups that they have.
Yep.
And it's got a ton of upside, even just beyond of what they're going to be week 1 of the 2022 NFL season.
Yeah. And this is kind of another guy where he was able to just kind of physically dominate in college. He's bigger, stronger than a lot of those people. So he as well has kind of got to refine the technical aspects of his game. He's not going to be able to just play bully ball, especially if he's out there against a starting lineman, starting tackles. Right. But that's where this coaching staff comes in. Hey, Ulbrich, get your keep, man.
Back 7 worries me. Front 4 is going to be great.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, cool. Anything else from preseason game 1 that you want to touch on? Any names that stuck out where you're like, hey, keep an eye on this guy making the team, or anything out there?
Nothing off the dome. I just, again, you kind of see this mentality that I think Saleh and his staff are bringing in, fighting back, getting another kind of late win. Again, it's preseason, it doesn't matter, but just that kind of fight, that kind of effort that you see from those guys, I just think is a reflection on the culture.
Yeah, I agree. They're trying to build something special here, and you see how excited Saleh was on that final touchdown where a ref has to hold him back. Instead, it's just he's such a good players coach, and for a young team, that's so important. You see it in New York, you see it in Detroit right now with Hard Knocks and Dan Campbell. It's like, for a young team, we're trying to put together and get rid of, decades of misery. It's great to have an organization that is putting more enjoyment and passion into the game of football instead of pressure and holy fuck, we need to get things together now. It's nice to be like, we're going to ride with the good times. We're going to learn from the tough ones, and hopefully it's all for the better.
Have you been keeping up with Hard Knocks?
Haven't watched a single second.
Me neither.
I don't know. I don't know if I've just been, it's been real busy the last few months. And I think you've been the same way too, where like, there are just certain things that, I still have only watched the Jets preseason games, haven't watched a lick of, any Colts stuff or any other teams. I don't plan on it. Still haven't watched the new House of Dragons. So I still got to catch up on that.
You gotta, if you're listening, watch it. It's so good.
I got to. So I love Thrones, so I'm gonna love this, but there's certain things where I'm like, I'll get to it when I get to it.
And I mean that's one, if you want to save it, binge it, that's cool. But dude, it is so good. I was like blown away. Yeah. Damn.
All right. Sure. Well, hey,
me, I love Thrones as well.
Not the most explosive podcast, but a lot of good things to touch on here for us today.
Hey,
Teddy.
man.
We got we're just a couple of weeks away. We've got the Snoopy Bowl coming up, but next week's podcast, next week's podcast is going to be a fun one. We got the Dr. Locks group chat in there.
Yes.
We're going to talk some AFC East preview for the season. We're going to have two other guys join us.
First guests of the pod.
First guest for the podcast, and it's going to be two of our good friends. So we're going to have some Bills talk, some Patriots talk. We'll talk a little bit about the Dolphins as well too, and we'll all kind of share our thoughts on how we think the division is going to unfold. So make sure to look out for that one next week. Going to be a really fun podcast. Teddy, before I send us off, anything else Jets related that you want to get into or talk about?
Nope. Just we got last preseason game on Sunday, and then 14 days later we'll be watching the real thing.
We're excited.
Getting to it. Yeah, man. It's exciting. Got fantasy drafts coming up these next 2 weeks. It's officially that time of year.
It's the best. It's the best time of year. Nothing beats
college football
awesome.
As well, everybody. Starting
week 0. Look out. Yeah,
yep.
I got a piece on some college football players.
Yeah.
2 days. You're right. The Thursday pod is throwing me off here a little bit. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to Chasing 69 and New York Jets podcast. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at NYJ_Chasing69. Same with the YouTube channel, Teddy at Teddy Huncho. I'm at Blake Andrew Pace. Make sure to check out all of my work at Sports Illustrated as well. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.
Fire.